Well, since Philip and I moved to the homestead here in Kentucky, we live in a small country town. And some of the luxuries that we got used to living in the city are not even available here. And one of those things is salted bagels. Now, a salted bagel isn't even available in every bagel shop you go into, so they're kind of hard to find in general. But out here in our little country town, not a single shop with salted bagels. So today we're going to make some with fresh ground flour. Hey friends, it's Barbara Sue at Kowalski Mountain and welcome back to our channel. Now today we're going to try a new recipe with fresh ground flour to make the salted bagels that are impossible to find in our small town and even the neighboring larger towns as well. Now today I'm going to be using my friend Kara's recipe. She has a blog called Grains in Small Places and she specializes in recipes with fresh ground flour. Now, rather than reinvent the wheel today, we're going to give her recipe a go and see how we like them. Now, the first thing we need to do is grind our wheat berries, and this uses a combination of hard white wheat berries and my favorite kamut. Now, I am loving kamut. This is an ancient grain. It adds a rich, wonderful flavor to your breads, and it's absolutely my favorite grain. Now, in Kara's recipe, she measures out her wheat berries by grams. So I have my scale out, and we're going to measure this out in grams. So let's make sure this is set correctly. We're on grams. We're going to tear it out. And there we go. Now we're going to start with 400 grams of hard white wheat. And now we're going to add 80 grams of kamut. I have a little bit left in my bucket. And there we go. Perfect, 480 grams. Now we're going to go ahead and grind our wheat in my Nutrimil Harvest Grain Mill. Now I am following Kara's recipe using the app Recipe Keeper, and that's how I store all of my recipes. I have an entire video all about the Recipe Keeper app, and you can see it up here. Because I've never tried Kara's recipe, it's in my new recipes to try folder, and I've actually marked it as a favorite. Today is baking day. I'm making bread and bagels, and I'm switching back and forth between recipes. Now, first up is our hot water. You want it to be warm enough that you can touch it, as we don't want it to kill the yeast. Now, whenever I look at a measuring cup, I always look at it straight on. If I look at this down here, it looks correct. But if I bring it up to eye level, I can tell I have a little bit too much water. Next up is the salt. And the next ingredient is what Kara calls the secret ingredient. Now this is a barley malt syrup, and I've never used it before. It's thick, kind of like molasses, kind of smells like molasses, but not as strong. Now this calls for the malt syrup in a couple of places. It goes into the bread dough and it also goes into the water. So we're going to put a tablespoon into this. Trying to stir that around a little bit so it's not just one clump in the bottom. Now if you don't have barley malt syrup, you can use molasses or you can use brown sugar, and that's per Kara's recipe. Now next up is our flour, and since we measured our flour by grams, we don't need to measure it out again. So I'm just going to dump this in. And my favorite feature of my Bosch mixer is the cover. So let's turn this on, and we just want all of the dry ingredients to mix together. Alright, so we mixed that until all of the dry flour was completely incorporated into the recipe, and now we're going to let this autolyse, and what that simply means is we're going to let it rest. When we're baking with fresh ground flour, it has all three parts of the wheat berry. By allowing it to rest, we allow the wheat berries and the flour to absorb the moisture in the recipe, and it's just going to work a whole lot better. Now we're going to give this a couple of hours. For best results, I like to give it the full 2 hours. Kara recommends at least 30 minutes. I am a big fan of just waiting the 2 hours and letting it get its full potential, because I want these to be amazing. So we'll come back after the autolyse is finished. All right, the time has passed and the autolyse is complete. So I've had my dough covered. We don't keep it super warm in the house, so I just cover it with a towel. That kind of helps with that. Now, this was not the raising part. This was only the resting part. When I want to raise my bread, I can raise it in my oven using only the pilot light. The pilot light will give me enough heat to raise my bread and keep it nice and toasty. And not have to worry about a good rise. Now at this point we're going to add the yeast, and I've already pre-measured my yeast, and I'm just going to sprinkle it on the top. And now we're going to start the kneading process. Now the kneading process is going to take quite a bit of time, 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll just kind of keep my eye on it. Now bagels are a very dense dough. So this is a very thick dough, and we expect it to be. We're going to let that bread knead, and then we'll come back and finish it up. Now in Kara's recipe, she mentions that the kneading of a bagel dough is really tough on a mixer because it's such a dense dough. But I have to tell you, my Bosch Universal Plus mixer is handling this like a pro. I am just so thrilled with how well it's handling this very dense dough. Alright, so the mixer is done, and I've been kind of checking the dough as it's been kneading to see if I thought it was close. I'm just going to finish a little bit here by hand. And this is a really dense dough, so we're not expecting to get window pane. We're really going by the feel of the bread. And you know, I've been making bread for many years, so I know, you know, it has a soft, elastic feel to it. This is not sticky. I don't have any flour or oil on my board. It's a nice soft dough. You'll see it's holding the finger punches to it. It actually feels really good. All right, so now I'm going to add this to my bowl and we're going to let this rise. Now we're only going to do it about 40 minutes. We're not expecting these to be like dinner rolls, so it's only going to rise some. It's going to be somewhat puffy, but not doubling in volume like bread or dinner rolls. So we're going to cover this up. And I'm going to stick this in a warm spot and let it raise. All right, now I let this dough rise about 50 minutes. I didn't think it was quite ready when it first came out, so I went ahead and gave it 10 more minutes. But now we are ready to shape our bagels. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of push on this a little bit. So I have a nice round dough ball to cut my bagels. Now I'm going to be using my bread scraper. And this makes 8 bagels. So we're going to cut this as evenly as we can into 8 pieces. Now, in Kara's recipe, she presents a couple of ways to shape your bagels. And I think I'm going to go with the making a flat ball and piercing the center to make my bagel. Now we want to make sure that these holes are big enough on the inside because these are going to raise. And they're going to make a little bit smaller as of a hole as they raise up. So that actually looks like a pretty good bagel. That was pretty simple. All right, I've prepared a tray. These are going to go on here. We're just going to shape each one into a bagel. Now I can definitely see the merit of the method of shaping that Kara taught in her video. She teaches to make a cylinder and then connect the ends. And I was a little concerned about that, the connection of the ends, which is why I chose to do it this way. But I can definitely see how that creates a very even bagel, makes the dough evenly shaped all the way around, I can definitely see the merit of that option. All right, last one. So the first thing I do is I'm just making it kind of a flat circle. I'm going to poke a hole in it. And now stretching that dough and kind of shaping the outside into the bagel shape. And I know that looks like a big hole. Don't worry, it'll be fine. All right, now these are going to get covered with plastic wrap and they are going to stay in the refrigerator overnight. Good morning. Now it's time to finish the bagels. And I did my refrigerator rise last night and I wasn't happy with it. I just didn't feel like my bagels rose at all. They pretty much looked exactly the same. So first thing this morning, I took my bagels out of the refrigerator. I put them in the oven with the pilot light on. We don't keep our home super warm to raise bread, so the pilot light is just the perfect amount of warmth to raise my bread. And I'm much happier with the way that the bagels look. I think if I were to do it again, I would do a second rise after I shaped the bagels and then put them in the refrigerator for the evening. Now I have done cold rise on bread before. It is a appropriate technique. I just didn't feel like it worked today, so I'm going to try a different way the next time I make them. So let's check them out. So this is the bagels after they've been rising for about 2 hours. Because remember, they were cold, so they had to warm up and then they had to rise. And I'm much happier with the way these look. So I definitely think that that was worth the time. Now I have a space issue, so I had to stack them in the oven, but this is the risen bagels. Now I've already started my water and it's actually already boiling, and I'm going to go ahead and preheat this oven. Now remember, we're making salt bagels, and I have to admit, I've never tried a salt bagel, but that's what Philip requested, so that's what we're making. Now I bought Redmond's real salt, and I did a lot of research before I started this project. I read a lot of different recipes for salt bagels to determine if I needed kosher salt or coarse salt. There is a difference in the size of the grains of salt. And what I found was it was like 50-50. Some people used coarse, some people used kosher. I couldn't find one that really rose to the top. Now I bought the kosher sea salt. We're gonna try it and see if this meets what he's expecting. If not, we'll order the course next time. Now I'm gonna go ahead and prep this. I just have a shallow plate. And I put a little bit of salt in here. Now when the bagels come out of the water, we're gonna roll them in the salt, get a nice salty coating, and then they're gonna be baked with the salt. Now the water's boiling, but we have a couple things we need to add to it. I'm going to add a tablespoon of sugar. And 2 tablespoons of the barley malt. right, let's give this a stir. Now I've got my tongs all ready to flip my bagels. I also need my timer. They're gonna cook 40 seconds per side. And I'm gonna time it because 40 seconds is longer than you think. Here's my lovely bagel. In it goes. And we're just going to do those 2 at a time. And here we go. So that was 40 seconds. Let's flip. Trying not to squish them. There we go. Another 40 seconds. Now after this 40 seconds, we're going to dip them into the salt as they come out. Okay, so we're going to take them out. One is going to go right into the salt. The other I'm just going to set to the side. I'm going to let my boil recover. Now, I asked Philip, and he said these get a good coating all around. Oh, that is a lot of salt. A lot of salt. Whew. Next one in. Oops. No. Wow. Next one's up. In they go. This one is hot. So I just kind of roll it around. Now this salt is already getting, you know, pretty wet. Oops, didn't do that. All right, let's do some more. Timer. I have to admit, this is kind of fun. I've never made bagels before, so I'm pretty curious to how they're going to taste. I think I'm going to leave just one bagel without salt because I don't really know that I need all that salt. Now your body will just excrete excess salt, but I don't think I need it. Ooh. Quiet rocks. All right, I think we're done. I'm going to take this nice, big, fluffy one, and I'm not going to salt it. Alright, so here's the salted bagels before they go into the oven. And I'm going to be a little bit creative to get these on the oven at one time. Alright, to get them all in here, I'm going to use my cast iron skillet on the bottom. And my baking sheet on top. Now those are going to bake for 25 minutes. Now these look perfect. I mean, I've never actually paid attention to what the salt bagels look like, but that definitely looks like a salty bagel, so I think it looks good. So just to give you an update about what I think about the salt, I think the kosher salt was great. I don't think I'd want to do coarse. I think it would be too much. Although I did a lot of reading about salt, and the smaller the grain, the more flavorful. So maybe. Now here's my batch with the one that's not salted. Now, in case you're wondering, Philip's initial reaction was, "That's too much salt." Now, I did it exactly the way that he requested, but he didn't anticipate what that would mean. So in the future, we're definitely going to try to sprinkle these with salt rather than roll them in the salt like I demonstrate. But in fairness, he ate them all.
They're good.
That was a
You might want to knock off a lot of that tropical salt, though. I think I'll stop there.
fresh flour. I like how crunchy they are.
Don't sit there and smack, because you're going to hear it later.
Oh, you're going to hear it too. You were smacking. You were smacking.
When?
While you were eating it.
This?
Yes.
Mmm.
Well, I have successfully made very salty salted bagels. I'm going to rub some of this off. Way too much salt for me. But I think the bagels are good.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in this one. I think the bagels are good. The flavor is nice. The texture is perfect. They're chewy on the inside, crispy on the outside. Really delicious bagels. I'm glad I made one without salt. But he asked for salty bagels. Salty bagels are on his plate. As always, we appreciate you watching, especially to the very end. Thank you so much. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, hit that button. We'd love you to become a part of the Kowalski Mountain family. We'll see you next time.